Hi kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza. This is Sweeney. Hey. You gonna do a lay down now? On top of me, yes. And this is Cheese. And we are here today. Sometimes I just think Winnie likes just to hear me talk. Because I think she thinks I'm talking to her. Because most of the time, she's right. I am talking to her. We are here today because we are going to do a Gothic Reads recommendation video. I am participating, I'm a co-host in the upcoming Phantom of the Opera Romance Readathon. I will link my announcement video as well as I'll link all kinds of things down below, and hopefully I'll remember to mention them also as I link them. But one of the things that I wanted to do was give you some Gothic reading recommendations to go with this readathon. But I thought we'd do this a little bit differently, and if we like it, we might do it again someday, and if we don't, we'll never speak of it again. I'll deny it. I'll just deny it exists. We'll all act like it was a mass hallucination, even though there'll be evidence on the internet. What I decided I was going to do, because there is kind of a list of classic Gothic literature that you're probably familiar with. If you're a reader, you've at least heard of these books, you know what they are. And so what I thought I would do is recommend some Gothic literature that I've enjoyed. And then for each book that I recommend that's a classic, I will give you a reimagining, retelling that also uses that book as its inspiration. So if you liked that book, you've got something else to pick up. I will let you know which ones I have read and which ones I haven't, because she just keeps like squeezing her face. She's trying to pet herself with my arm. But I will let you know which ones I have read and which ones I haven't, which ones are on my TBR and which ones have made it to the pile of, yes, I've read them and enjoyed them. How about that? I love you so much, but you are a lot. You know that? The first book that we are going to talk about is Jane Eyre. This book I absolutely loved, and if you've never picked this up, I think you should give it a try. Honestly, I think all of the Bronte sisters' books fall into, at least I think, fall into the Gothic literature category. And so this book is the story of Jane, and she lives a tough life. Poor Jane. She goes through it. She is, when she is a young woman, hired on to be the governess at this remote, crumbling estate for this moody and mysterious man's charge, or his ward, I guess it would be, who is this young, tiny little French girl who seems absolutely adorable, but we are in this big spooky manor with mysterious noises, things creeping and crawling, and lots of secrets. The first half of this book, when we are growing up with Jane, getting to the estate, the creepy things start happening, is my favorite. Once we take the turn, the second half of the book, it's still good. I still enjoyed it, but kind of that mystery of what's happening was really, really good. As you can see, I tabbed the ever-living crap out of this, and I am not usually an annotation girly. I really, really enjoyed this, and I think it's one of those books that even if you have some sort of spoilers through osmosis is what I keep calling it. I don't think anyone has necessarily actually spoiled this for me, but because I consume media, I knew what the twist was going to be after it happened. I was like, oh yeah. Hey friends, so I was editing and I did not realize until the moment that I opened my eyes really wide that I have popped a blood vessel. I'm really sorry. It doesn't hurt. I know exactly what happened. It's not that big of a deal, but if it's totally grossing you out, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was there. Also, I feel like it's kind of on brand to be talking about Gothic novels and just having a giant red eyeball. I'm so sorry. That's what this was all about. So it didn't necessarily take away from it for me, but I love Jane Eyre, and this is definitely a Gothic romance as well. If you are looking for something similar to Jane Eyre, I found something that has recently piqued my interest and something that I will most likely be picking up during this readathon, and that is John Eyre, and this is by Mimi Matthews. This is a historical Gothic romance, but it's a gender swap. So we have John, who is a disgraced schoolmaster who moves to this crumbling seaside estate to be the tutor for two boys whose mother is widowed. There is a dark and broody atmosphere. There's a supernatural element to this. This sounds very mysterious, mist, castle, seaside vibes. Also, it's got the Jane Eyre twist to it. This is going to, I'm sure, have some of the same reveals. This is a Gothic historical romance. If you like Jane Eyre, why not try John Eyre? I'm going to try John Eyre. The next Gothic classic that we're going to talk about is one that I think is kind of the epitome of it has been reimagined 1,000 different ways in 1,000 different types of media. Dracula by Bram Stoker. This book, I was actually pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it when I first picked it up. If you don't know what Dracula is about, welcome to the world. I hope you enjoyed living under that rock for as long as you did. This is the story of Jonathan Harker, who is, I believe, some sort of accountant, and he is tasked with traveling to Transylvania, I believe it is, to this remote estate to help his accounting firm out with this one specific client. When he gets there, this crumbling gothic castle, this mysterious and slightly sinister character that is Dracula. But also at the same time, we've got Harker's fiance, Mina, who is back home when the strange things start happening to her and people around her. This is been adapted 1,000 different ways, 1,000 times over. I feel like the main one that sticks in my brain is the Francis Ford Coppola one, where we have Dracula with the crazy hairdo. But also Winona Ryder giving us that accent.
Do I know you, sir? Are you acquainted with my husband? Shall I call the police?
I love Winona Ryder, so I'm not here to shame her, but that accent, girl. I think this book is something that you need to read at the right time when you're in the right mood. Even though it's got a bunch of different characters, you're reading journal entries and letters, there's a lot of things going on. It's still very slow-paced and creepy moving, not as bombastic as some of the retellings, reimaginings that you've probably enjoyed. So go into it knowing this is a much older story. It is a classic, but it is creeping and crawling through a lot of the parts. But with this, I have two kind of reimaginings that are my favorites as far as books go. And the one we are going to talk about is definitely a gothic romance, a gothic dark romance. This is Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is the independent, it's really shiny and I'm trying not to blind you. This is the independently published cover. This has been picked up by a publisher and has a different cover now, but this is what it looked like originally. This is the story of Constanta. She is a medieval peasant who, on the verge of death, is rescued by this mysterious figure who is undying, and he is our Dracula character. Although I don't believe that he is ever actually called Dracula in this, if I remember correctly. She falls in love with Dracula. He saves her life. He brings her into this lavish, aristocratic manner and lifestyle. She gets everything she ever wanted, but this is a very toxic relationship. The entire story is her actually telling the story to Dracula, why she does what she does, how she ends up where she ends up. In this, there is other brides that are brought into the marriage. There is a polyamorous situation happening. This is absolutely beautiful. This is about being in a toxic relationship. In the story of Dracula, the brides, they're mentioned, but they're not a main part of the story. And so now we're kind of fleshing those characters out, making them whole people in the situation they're in with this toxic, immortal love interest. The next book we're going to talk about is another classic, and this one is actually what we're going to call the inspiration for Dracula. I don't know if you can hear that, but Winnie just started screaming in the back. Hold on. Our groceries just got here, so Winnie needed to trumpet its arrival. Okay. No. It is more well known at this point that the story of Dracula written by Bram Stoker had an inspiration of its own that was another book that came prior to that, and that is Carmilla. And this is by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. This is the story of a young woman named Laura who finds herself entranced by another woman named Carmilla. There are, again, vampire elements to this, and this is also touted as being kind of one of the original sapphic vampire stories as far as I've heard. It is supposed to have amazing gothic imagery. It's supposed to be eerie and strange. I have never read it. I have this really cool copy of it that, again, is blindingly shiny. But this is actually the inspiration for Dracula, and so it is a classic all of its own. The story that also was inspired by Carmilla would be a recent release from the same person that gave us A Dowry in Blood, S.T. Gibson, and that is An Education in Malice. This is a dark academia story where our main character, Laura, has a rivalry with the beautiful and mysterious Carmilla, while they both attend an isolated and ancient school for girls, where secrets are currency and strange ceremonies welcome students into the fold. This is supposed to be dark academia, vampire adjacent, sapphic. I have not read this one, but because I enjoyed S.T. Gibson's take on a reimagining of Dracula, I don't see how I could dislike a reimagining of Carmilla. And the last one that we're going to put on this classics list that I've just recently ordered and finally showed up from Pango. Coming at you with all the shiny covers. This is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, I'm going to say. Gaston Leroux. This is something that even though I have actually seen the Broadway play, I saw it off Broadway. It was the first ever like opera musical theater, live theater experience that I ever had was seeing The Phantom of the Opera. And I remember it was just like burned into my brain. But since this is the theme of the readathon that I am going to be a co-host in, I thought it was probably appropriate that I actually read the original text. And I can get extra points for reading Phantom of the Opera, so it's just a win-win for me. This is the story of a young woman named Christine who has caught the attention of a mysterious cryptid, I'm going to call him. Basically, she has caught the attention of a myth within the theater. He is this angel of music. He is a musician, and he is creepy and sinister, and he loves Christine for her talent and her beauty. This is a story of obsession and music and opera, and also it's not that long, so I'm actually kind of excited. It's touted as a horror gothic novel, so that's pretty interesting. I did not know that about The Phantom of the Opera. But I decided with this one, instead of just going for gothic reimaginings or things gothic inspired stories from Phantom of the Opera, I thought I would give you two for this one. The ones that I actually am the most interested in aren't nearly as gothic, but I thought I should at least give these to you because they piqued my interest. We have The Midnight Duet, and this is by Jen Comfort. This is the story this is another gender swap situation where this is the story of Erica. She was a former Broadway star. She was incredibly successful until an accident on stage disfigured her and just catapulted her out of the limelight. So she now has bought this opera far away from everything, and she has just hemorrhaged money into it in a last-ditch effort to save it from ruin. But she is now very secluded and elusive and become this solitary character when she, for financial circumstances, has to rent the opera to a rock group. I believe it's like a heavy metal rock group or a glam rock group. I don't know. Rock stars. She has to rent the entire opera out to rock stars. She quickly learns that the lead singer has a secret that he's keeping from the rest of the band, and she can use this to her advantage. She promises to keep his secret. They enter into a deal, but it has benefits to her as well, where they start meeting for midnight solo singing sessions, and slowly the tension builds between them. But you, again, have this character who kind of keeps to herself, falling in love and becoming obsessed with the beautiful, bright, and shining star. I thought it sounded pretty fun. The other one that I'm interested in is actually Maskerade by Terry Pratchett. This is book 5 in the Witches series. I think I'm only 2 books into the Witches series, but I don't know if I could just pick this one up if I wanted to. But this is Terry Pratchett's series of satirical fantasy novels that are such a funny, fun, good time. I've loved the Witches series, and this book in the Witches series is inspired by Phantom of the Opera, taking place in an opera house in one of the major cities in this fantasy world. If you've read anything from Discworld, you know exactly what you're getting into with these kind of books. They're silly and fun, but never frivolous. You have a great time. I love Discworld. But that, kids, is a very random list of books, including Gothic classics and some books that were inspired by those Gothic classics. I'm just here to constantly ruin your TBR, because I'm constantly ruining mine, and if you were my friend, you would ruin yours too. If you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there, wherever you are, and I'd love to hear about them. And if you liked the way this video worked with me giving you classics and things that were inspired by them, let me know. If you absolutely hated it, don't tell me, because that would hurt. And I thought we were friends. But I'll see you next time.